order to start, I wanted to share with you a concept that I got from a book by Michael D. It's called Forced Dynamic Life Drawing for Animators, and I'll leave a link in the description of the video so you can find the book for yourself. I think it's a really great book on the subject, and it covers a lot of ground really that I won't be covering here, because I like to keep things as simple as I possibly can, and just give you the information in a way that I understand it for use in my own figures. But what he does is he shows a series of interconnecting curves, and the concept behind this is you have the force of gravity acting upon your figure, and that gravity is distributed down through the figure this way, and then it bounds down this way, and then it down this way, and ultimately to the ground, and making use of that will ground your figure using gravity. And he shows an example in his book that I thought was really, really instructive, and he shows some curves that are actually connecting into each other. And you can see just from a visual perspective, it's nowhere near as pleasing to look at as something like this. And so what's happening is the force is convening and just ending in a point. And so when you draw symmetrical curves going into each other like that, if I drew a leg like that, and here's my foot, it really has nowhere near the kind of force I would get if I drew my leg here, and then the bottom here, curve here. And so I'm distributing the force down this way, into this curve, down into this curve here, a little bit further down here, and then into the foot. And it just gives everything much more of a grounded feel. And conceptually, it can be a little bit difficult to understand, and it was a little bit for me to get my head around, but it is very, very useful. And really, I think the number one thing that you want to get from it is just to avoid these kinds of forms. And you can see why they're very, very inert. And so we're going to take that.
We've helped millions of creators improve their SEO to grow their YouTube channels. TubeBuddy is a platform that...
And I'm going to move on to some figures, and this is very much based on George Bridgman. And so I'm going to draw a figure standing, and I'm going to draw it in a relatively flat posture at first. My legs, this is going to be a very simple figure. My lower leg, and then my foot, my head is going to be here. And this figure really has no power or force down into the ground. But if I take that same figure, and I really push my angles going down, I can get a lot more force into the ground. And you can see how this figure looks like it's being pushed by gravity. You have this form pushing downward and out, and then leading to here, to here, and then ultimately down to the ground. And that's why figures that have more of a curved line through them, that flows through them, have so much more dynamism than something that is just much more flat and inert, or something that, in worst case scenario, just comes to a point like this. So the next concept that I really want to cover, and this is also something that Michael Mattesi covered really well in his book, which I highly recommend that you get a copy of, is all about force moving through a figure. And so if your overall gesture is coming out through this way, let's say, just as an example, you want your whole figure, I'm going to draw my chest here, here's my pelvis, here's a leg, and all my energy is coming up from the ground here. I'll draw the other leg here, there's no weight on it. And I'll draw an arm, and the arm extends all the way through the force, so my force is coming all the way from my foot, all the way through the arm, and the whole figure is an overall gesture. And you can see that just a simple stick figure essentially has a lot of power and force to it in just approaching it that way. As opposed to if I was to draw my arm coming out this way, and I've got my force running through my arm this way, but then I'm just going to close it off by drawing the body like this. And so there's no power coming from the shoulder at all, because the rest of the force of my body is shooting out through this way. And so that's why a punch with a follow through is always going to have more power if I draw my arm coming through, all the way through the body like this. And I'll draw my head in here, here's my arm, very, very simple drawing. Just get the point across, and I can even accentuate it. I've got this arm pushing forward. If I take my opposing arm and pull it back, it actually pushes this arm out even harder. If I was to take that same arm, I've got force running through my body all the way through the arm, and that's fine. If I take my other arm and put it here, it still has some power to it, but now I'm really kind of closing off my body, and I'm not pulling out force all the way from this arm through. Because gravity is so important in a figure, if I draw a figure just standing in an even neutral pose with my gravity right down to the center of the figure, I can draw one leg on one side of it, my other leg on the other side, my lower legs drawn in here, arms, and there's a simple figure, and my gravity, I kind of came off in the sketch of my line downward. My gravity is basically evenly distributed at the bottom of the figure, and it's very easy to diagnose if your figure is falling over one way or the other way, just by kind of drawing a line through most of the mass of your figure, and your weight needs to be evenly distributed over that center point. If I want to put all my weight on one foot, at that point I need to start to play with the angles of my body. And so I'm going to do something a little bit more like this. This will be my shoulders, this will be my pelvis here. So there's my shoulder, my pelvis. I've got all my weight resting here on my pelvic bone, and I need to make sure that I have a center of gravity again, which is going to be right here. Here's my head. And so I'm going to make sure that my leg rests on that center of gravity, and then my other leg, which isn't really bearing as much weight, can come off to the side. And as it is, I feel like my upper body is actually pushed over this way too much, and so I'm erasing it. And let's try that again. And this is where really knowing your center of gravity and where you're distributing your weight can help you diagnose those kinds of problems. And so I'm going to bring my body over just like this a little bit more. And there, now I've got my weight distributed well on top of this foot. And this problem I can diagnose for myself really quickly and make sure that my figure actually has weight, because I know where I want my center of gravity, and it's on this foot, so I make sure that my mass is distributed over it. And so I just adjusted things over, so it had that effect. I don't need ultimately to go with one angle for my upper body and another angle for my lower body. I can do something like, I'll do the same angle for my upper body, and I'm going to do the same angle for my lower body, and we'll distribute the weight on one foot again. And so now my weight's going to be distributed on this foot, on this hip. And so I'm going to make sure that as much of my mass as possible is distributed right on top of that point. And maybe this is something that would work if, we're doing Shakespeare and he's holding a skull in his hand, he's looking up at it, and that's a pose that would really work. Just simple gestural sketches, but there you go. And he's got his weight distributed on top of his left leg this way, and I'm drawing the same angle all the way through. And so it's a choice you can make depending on the pose that you want to choose. But the important part is to make sure that your mass is properly distributed over the balance point of your figure. That really leads us into the next section, where I can draw figures crouched and really make sure that they have mass that powers in through the ground. And so here's my figure. I've got my head here. I'm going to draw an arm coming off this way, and another arm over here. Really doesn't matter. And he's kind of angled toward us this way. And I've got my pelvis just below. And so I can decide if I want to evenly distribute between two legs. And so here's my mass evenly distributed between two legs. And you can see that it works, because my whole body is pushing down between the legs, and these are acting as my bracing on the ground. Now, if I want to do this figure, and I want to put him squarely on top of one leg, what I need to do for that, and I'll draw the same figure again. And so basically that's a similar figure to what I had first time around. And I want to put all my weight this way on top of this leg. And so in order to do that, what I need to do is angle my whole body out and bring my pelvis in this way. So now when I bring my foot out, what I want is to make sure that my weight is distributed on top of this foot. And it doesn't need to be completely distributed on top of it. So for this case, I'm going to bring my foot out here, my other foot here, and most of his weight is going to be pushed on top of this foot, and maybe 20% on top of the rear foot. I can take that further by drawing that leg and squarely putting all of my weight on top of my front leg, like this. And I'll bring the head over just a little bit more, just to bring more of my body mass out over my supporting leg. And now I can actually even lift that foot, and it's like and it gives him the feeling of pushing forward on top of this leg here, because all of his mass is on it. It gives us a forward motion toward us, just like that. So next, I'm going to draw a simple torso shape, and I'm going to draw a figure punching. So here's my arm, my pelvis will be just about here, and this is just a standing figure. My other arm's going to be here, my hand, my head will be here, just in a relaxed position, and I've got my arm extended out. So I'll start with my hand. I tend to do that when I'm drawing a hand extended from the body. And there's my hand. There's my arm extended out. And he's punching. But you can see there's no power in that at all, and it really looks like he's just got his arm lifted out toward us. And what we want to do is make it like there's power going through that hand. And so the next thing that we can do, the first, I guess, easiest thing to diagnose is finding out where our power is stopping and why it's not flowing. And in this case, it's stopping from the shoulder right here. So in order to fix that, what we can do is blow our power up through the body. And so I'm going to curve my body. There's my arm socket here. My whole body is arcing into that arm just a little bit more. Here's my hand. Here's my head. Here's my hips. And from here, I'm drawing the same figure. And here's my other arm. And it actually has a little bit more power because I'm not stopping the power of my fist going forward here, but I am stopping it here. And I'm not creating any power through by keeping this arm just down. And there's no power coming up through the ground at all and through my feet. All my power is coming just from this point right here. And then I give you much more power, certainly, than this punch here, but it's still not very dynamic. It's better. But in order to really sell a punch or sell any motion that you want in your figure, you need to make your whole body really work. And so in this next version, here's my upper body. There's my head. That's where one arm's going to come through. My other arm, and extend my arm all the way through that. And I'm arcing my power all the way up through the body like this. I'll lift this leg completely off the ground because all of my power is pushing up through this back leg here, my head. And then to really sell this punch, I want to pull this arm back. And pulling this arm back arcs all the way through and pushes my weight this way. So I'm going to bring my arm back. And there are times when I'm drawing my arm, I'll even kind of curve it this way because I want to push all of my energy through the elbow back like this. And it really kind of accentuates that power coming down this way and bring you all the way through into the punch. And that's using my whole body to push all of my energy through that hand. And you can see my power is derived from the ground all the way up in through the body and into the punch. And I'm also twisting my body, so my body's twisting around this way. And in order to really accentuate that twist, I want to push my shoulder out this way, but also bring this arm back and really power it through. So now that we have that covered, I want to take a look at how we can use some of those very simple concepts and start to fix some figures that are looking a little stiff, maybe a little bit off in terms of gravity, and see if we can diagnose the problems that we're having with our figures and use what we've learned to improve them. And really, I think this is the best way to show dynamic figures in action, is to take figures that are really not very dynamic for whatever reason and find ways that we can make them more dynamic. And so for this figure here, he's really falling backward a little bit this way, and that's a bit of a problem with the figure. And so I'm not feeling a center of gravity balance between his legs as much as I would like to. His legs really should be much more centered. I think his center of gravity is really pushing back over here just a little bit too much, and so he's kind of falling backwards. Also, I feel like his head is really pushing away from the figure just a bit this way. It doesn't really have any connection to it. And really, there's no real gravitational flow downwards to the figure. And so we're going to draw the figure again. I'm going to angle my chest upwards. So the whole angle is like this. I'm going to make sure I've got my center of balance right here, so I want to make sure my legs are evenly distributed over that. And I'm creating much more of a shape through here that really extends down to the legs too. You can see this leg here kind of follows along that overall shape. I'm getting a little bit sketchy here. I'm going to draw my other arm just on this side. And now for my head, I've got a shape coming back across the back of my spine, and I want to extend my head up through that shape. And it's very important when you draw a head on a figure to be considering where your spine is and make sure that your head is really centered on that spine. And that will really center your head on a figure and give it an overall feeling. So there's a figure with my chest out. And it has more power because I can feel the weight pushing down here into the legs, which are counterbalancing it by pulling back just a little bit through here. And I've got my gravity running through my figure. So now for my next example, this is a figure that's punching with one arm and kicking with the opposite leg, which is really the right way to go about it. If you're walking, for instance, and you have one leg extended out and the other leg back, you really want the opposing arm forward and this arm back. That twisting the body is part of how you produce motion. And so it's done properly in that sense. But the problem with this figure is that this arm pushing forward here is being completely limited by the shoulder being completely pinned. There's no push from the back at all. It's just pinned. All of your energy is pinned right there. So the arm is just really held out there. This arm being pulled back this way also is just pinned right here. There's no movement in the chest at all to get that across. And I have a similar problem with the leg, which is just pinned here, and there's no motion in the body at all to project that leg forward. And so to make the figure more dynamic, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think of my overall body as a movement of force. And I know that I want to project my body's force out through the hip, which is about here, out this way. And so I'm going to draw my chest in. Here's my pelvis. And I want my whole body to be creating that kind of a shape, to be pushing my energy out right where I want it, right where the leg is extending out. On top of that, I want to really push this arm out more. And so I'm going to twist my body as it comes up, bring it around. So my shoulder is really projecting forward. And then my rear arm, I really want to pull back. And the motion of that arm pulling back works all the way around to push this arm forward. Clean up my shape just a little bit now that I've really twisted my body. And I'm going to bring my head forward just a little bit to balance my body. I don't want the figure to be falling over backward. Angling my chest, bringing the arm out, bringing this arm back, and pushing all of the energy of my body out through the foot gives the whole body some action. And so for our next one, I've got a character blocking. This is really kind of karate pose, and this is what you would see if somebody's in a karate dojo and they're just striking that pose, maybe learning the pose, and everything's in the right place, and the pose is being done correctly, but it has no power to it. I'm not seeing any power being transferred through this arm, which is blocking out this way. And this arm is being pulled back, and I'm actually feeling that somewhat. But there's no twist in the body, there's no motion, none of the body just being straight up and down is transferring any motion through that arm at all. And we're going to work with that pose just a little bit and see if we can get a little bit more dynamics from it. And so what I'm going to do is I know I want my arm here to be the focus of my motion, and so I'm going to angle my whole body out toward it. So here's my chest, my pelvis, along the same line, I'm drawing out the force through my body this way. And then my arm is going to come out like this, and I really want to accentuate all of that movement through the arm. So I want to make sure that it flows along that line through the body. And all the way down through that wrist. And I can even maybe point that wrist just a little bit because I'm really pushing it. That's where my force really stops, right through that wrist. Just like, right behind, saying this, right through my elbow, just like this. I've got the other arm pulled back, which I felt like worked just fine. And I'm going to take all of my power, and I really want to push it through this leg. And you can see that my body is pushing right down, all of my energy is pushing right down through the center of the body. But I want to push it all the way through the leg, up through that arm. And so I'm going to draw my leg a little bit more like this. And now I'm pushing my energy all the way through that leg. And my other leg, which is going to balance my figure, is going to come out like this. And you can see that I'm actually pushing my energy through that arm. And it looks like I'm really pushing that arm outward, and there's force behind it here, as opposed to a figure like this that's really just standing there. And it really is just taking your figure and finding your motion, finding your line of motion, and making sure that your figure flows along that line and nothing disrupts that flow. You want to make sure that I've got my leg, and I could be pushing my energy out through it because my body just sits upright like this, my motion stops right there. And I've got my arm here, and it could be pushing out this way, but because this is just inert here, my motion stops there. Whereas with this one, I've got my motion flowing all the way down through that leg into the foot from the ground. And so this arm is actually being pushed out all the way from the ground, where you derive your power. And the whole body is working to push that arm out. And so for our next figure, I've got a character throwing a punch. Basically, this is a karate style punch. It's really what you would see, again, very similar to this pose here, where it's something you would see somebody practicing a punch. There's no power in the punch at all. It really is just going through the motions. And so, very similarly to this figure here, the reason why there's no power in this arm is I'm completely stopping all my energy right there. And there's no power in this arm because I'm stopping my energy here. I'm really not pulling my arm back using my body. I'm not pushing this arm forward using my body. I'm putting a decent amount of energy through this foot. So the back foot really in this pose is really not bad at all, but I can always make it better. And my center of gravity is well established. My figure is standing upright, there's no movement forward or backward. And this is an example where, very similar to this one, and I should have mentioned this, I'm really pushing my center of gravity forward this way. So I'm pushing forward this way and planting down my weight onto this foot here. And it's pushing my body's mass forward and into this block. And I'm going to do the same thing with this figure here. I'm going to push my figure forward and put more of my weight onto this foot. And so I'm transferring weight from my rear foot up through the body, all the way through the arm in one motion, and then planting my weight onto my front foot. And so what I want to do is I'm going to draw a very similar arc that I did before. I want my whole body to flow through that arc all the way through to the punch. And so I'm going to draw my chest shape just like this. And it's much more angled toward us because I'm turning my body around toward us as I project that punch out. There's my arm pushing that punch. My other arm, I want to make sure to really pull back. And my energy is coming up through that elbow this way. And I've got all my energy arcing through the body like this. So I'm going to bring it all the way down through my legs. There's my front leg that I'm transferring my balance and my weight to. And my rear leg, I'm going to be extended out through that motion all the way through the punch. I'm going to extend my head forward too, just a bit. I don't want my head to be just completely centered on top of my neck. I want it to also be pushing forward with the power of my punch, just like this. But the truth is, I feel like I'm actually losing a little bit of power when I come up into the arm, and the reason for that is my curve is really going downward like this, and so I feel like if I actually extend my arm just downward from there, I'm arcing my power all the way through the body in one continuous arc that pushes outward like this. And I can make my figure just a little bit more dynamic just by bringing the arm slightly down, and so it moves all the way through with my motion.